Welcome back. Another week passed, and Mr. Azaria Jones's 18 barrels of potatoes began to spoil in the hold. So, spoil means rot. I'm ruined, he wailed, pacing the hot decks. His heavy face hung slack under a large straw hat. Nonsense, said Praiseworthy, out for a stroll. I'm a poor man, groaned the Yankee trader. I had every cent I owned in those potatoes. I tell you, I'm ruined. Then you must sell them, remarked the butler, who wished only to be of service. Sell spoiled potatoes? My good friend, it's clear that you know nothing about trade. Not a thing. Who do you think will buy them? I haven't the faintest idea, said Praiseworthy, but that's only because I haven't given the matter any thought. It was a hard problem, even for Praiseworthy. The next day, the French immigrant, Monsieur Gaunt, could be seen pacing the decks in one direction, while Mr. Azariah Jones paced it in the other. Mon Dieu, declared the Frenchman, I'm ruined. My great cuttings are drying up, and the captain will not give me a drop of fresh water to keep them alive. I'm ruined. Then you must water them, said Praiseworthy. Water them? Exclaimed the Frenchman. Water them? With what? Why, with water, replied the butler. And I just want you to remember something that we read in the last chapter, or maybe it was the beginning of this chapter in our previous reading, that their ship is stuck going nowhere because they have no wind and they've run out of coal. And they've just been sitting there for weeks. And when you're in a ship, you can't drink ocean water. So they have tanks of fresh water. And the fresh water has gotten very low. So Captain Swain has had to ration the water. Just like when you go to the store and they say you can only buy one package of toilet paper right now. Well, you can only have so much water. So Captain Swain is not going to give water to this person because he wants to keep his grape cuttings alive. And a grape cutting, by the way, is just a really small plant. And he is trying to take all these grape plants to California to plant them and start a vineyard. So he's saying that his grape plants are dying because they don't have enough water. Meanwhile, Mr. Azariah Jones says, what am I going to do with 18 barrels of rotten potatoes? So they both have a problem, and Praiseworthy, like Praiseworthy, is trying to help solve. All right, let's see what's going to happen. The Frenchman shook his head. I have 50 gold pieces in my money belt, but not 1,000 gold pieces will buy me fresh water on this ship. We must find a way, said Praiseworthy. Fresh water and coal lay waiting 1,000 miles further north at the port of Callao on the coast of Peru. But the Lady Wilma seemed rooted to the spot, becalmed and motionless. All that day, Praiseworthy racked his brain. Fine men, Monsieur Gaunt and Mr. Azariah Jones, the butler told himself, and something must be done to help them. But even if a stiff wind came up, the gold ship could hardly make port soon enough to save the grape cuttings. And not even in Callao, Praiseworthy supposed, could he find a buyer for 18 barrels of spoiled potatoes. Indeed, Master Jack, said Praiseworthy, I seem to be a failure at my first attempt at both trade and agriculture. I suppose we should at the very least reimburse Mr. Azariah Jones for the few raw potatoes we helped ourselves to when we were stowaways. Suddenly Jack's eyebrows shot up. A thought bolted into him like lightning. He was unable to speak for a full 3 minutes. Well, actually it says 3 seconds. Praiseworthy, he exclaimed. That's it. That's what? You've got it. Got what? At that moment, Mr. Azariah Jones came pacing down the deck from one direction, while Monsieur Gaunt came pacing from the other. Jack quickly explained, and Praiseworthy's eyes instantly lit up. Gentlemen, said the butler, holding up his umbrella to stop the Yankee trader and the Frenchman, Master Jack here tells me I have hit upon a marvelous notion. Why, it's so simple. A boy could have thought of it. What's this? Asked Mr. Azariah Jones, his hands clasped hopelessly behind his back. Monsieur Gaunt, said Praiseworthy, as your agricultural advisor, I suggest that you buy Mr. Azariah Jones 18 barrels of potatoes. They're a bit spoiled, but a good bargain. Potatoes? Exclaimed the Frenchman. Don't make jokes. Oh, it's no joke, I assure you, said Praiseworthy. Confound it, Praiseworthy! No one is going to pay me for spoiled potatoes. Nonsense, said the butler. Spoiled potatoes may be, but they are also juicy. Master Jack can attest to that. Why, they're like fat raindrops and brown skins. Monsieur Gaunt, you need only poke each of your grape cuttings into a plump potato. I dare say they will stay alive all the way to Peru. Do you remember at the beginning of the book when Jack and Praiseworthy were in the barrel's hiding? And when Jack first came out of the barrel, he was doing something. Anyone remember what he was doing? He was sucking on a potato because he said he was thirsty. And any of you who have ever cut potatoes before, when you slice a potato on the counter, you're going to see a lot of moisture build up because inside of a potato is a lot of water, just like there's water in watermelon and lots of things. So Praiseworthy is saying that if you make a hole in the potato and you stick the grape plant in it, the plant will suck out the water. So let's see what they say. The Frenchman and the Yankee trader stood facing each other in the sun, and broad smiles crept over their slack, gloomy faces. I'll buy your potatoes, exclaimed Monsieur Gaunt. I'll sell you my potatoes, exclaimed Mr. Azariah Jones. I'm saved! I'm saved! And the bargain was struck on the spot. Jack remained silent, but stuck his hands in his pockets and felt proud of himself. Why, if he hadn't been a stowaway, if he hadn't slaked his thirst with potatoes at hand, why, some future hillside would be left without a vineyard. Gentlemen, said Mr. Azariah Jones, beaming at Praiseworthy and Jack, you'll need a few tools in the gold fields. When we reach Peru, I'm going to buy you the best pick and shovel to be had. On the contrary, corrected the Frenchman, it is I who will buy them the best pick and shovel. With that, Monsieur Gaunt hurried to the hold and busied himself with a jackknife. He cut holes in the potatoes and slipped in grape cuttings, like so many straws. The next morning, a wind from the south came up, and the Lady Wilma's canvas swelled out in great white billows. A happy shout went up, and the ship began to move through the sea. For days after that, Mr. Azariah Jones stopped anyone who would listen to say, Remarkable pair, Praiseworthy and the lad. Born traders, you know. Imagine finding a buyer for 18 barrels of spoiled potatoes. Snapping winds drove the gold ship into even warmer latitudes. Soon the Argonauts, and those are people looking for gold, were down to shirt sleeves again, and a growing excitement took hold of them, as if they could smell land in the air. Men began to trim their beards and wash their clothes. Callao stood 10 days ahead. In his stocking cap, Jack was taking on the aspect of a young sailor. The salt air and the wind had toughened his face. His eyes narrowed with a look of distance in them. He wandered higher and higher into the riggings, exploring the mysteries aloft, the foot ropes and shrouds and blocks. More than once the boatswain, a bantam with a voice like a frog's, chased him down, but it was like trying to keep a boy out of a backyard tree. Hanging on to a yardam, Jack was the first to notice a white speck on the horizon behind the Lady Wilma. The speck grew into sails, the sails into a ship, and the ship turned out to be the Sea Raven. "She's gaining on us," shouted Mountain Jim. By noon, the Sea Raven was alongside, skimming lightly over the seas. The wind seemed to pick her up and carry her along like a feather. "Blast!" roared Captain Swain. "And me half sunk in the water with building bricks! Bricks! I have a notion to dump them overboard." By dusk, the Sea Raven was gone, beyond the horizon, far ahead. And we're going to stop right there.